Hi, I'm Rashonda Kay. This is Reading with Rashonda. We're still reading Running a Thousand Miles for Freedom by William and Ellen Craft. This is part 1, video 9, and let's dive in. On my master entering the cabin, he found at the breakfast table a young Southern military officer with whom he had traveled some distance the previous day. After passing the usual compliments, the conversation turned upon the old subject, niggers. The officer, who was also traveling with the manservant, said to my master, "You will excuse me, sir, for saying I think you are very likely to spoil your boy by saying thank you to him. I assure you, sir, nothing spoils a slave so soon as saying thank you and if you please to him. The only way to make a nigger toe the mark and to keep him in his place is to storm at him like thunder and keep him trembling like a leaf. Don't you see when I speak to my Ned, he darts like lightning, and if he didn't, I'd skin him." Just then the poor dejected slave came in, and the officer swore at him fearfully, merely to teach my master what he called the proper way to treat me. After he had gone out to get his master's luggage ready, the officer said, "That is the way to speak to them. If every nigger was drilled in this manner, they would be as humble as dogs and never dare to run away." How did they not laugh right there? So remember, William is pretending to be Ellen's slave. Ellen is dressed up as a sickly man, and they're having this whole conversation with this cruel slaveholder while they are running away. And he says, if you would treat them this way, they would never run away. I don't understand why you think treating somebody cruelly would keep them with you. I think it would make them run away faster. But anyway, that tickled me. I'll keep going. The gentleman urged my master not to go to the north for the restoration of his health, but to visit the warm springs in Arkansas. My master said he thought the air of Philadelphia would suit his complaint best, and not only so, he thought he could get better advice there. Ha ha! The boat had now reached the wharf. The officer wished my master a safe and pleasant journey and left the saloon. There were a large number of persons on the quay waiting the arrival of the steamer, but we were afraid to venture out for fear that someone might recognize me or that they had heard that we were gone and had telegraphed to have us stopped. However, after remaining in the cabin till all the other passengers were gone, we had our luggage placed on a fly, and I took my master by the arm, and with a little difficulty he hobbled on shore, got in, and drove off to the best hotel, which John C. Calhoun and all the other great Southern fire-eating statesmen made their headquarters while in Charleston. On arriving at the house, the landlord ran out and opened the door, but judging from the poultices and green glasses that my master was an invalid, he took him very tenderly by one arm and ordered his man to take the other. My master then eased himself out, and with their assistance found no trouble in getting up the steps into the hotel. The proprietor made me stand on one side, while he paid my master the attention and homage he thought a gentleman of his high position merited. A gentleman of his high position. And it's a runaway woman slave. My master asked for a bedroom. The servant was ordered to show a good one, into which we helped him. The servant returned. My master then handed me the bandages. I took them downstairs in great haste and told the landlord my master wanted 2 hot poultices as quickly as possible. He rang the bell. The servant came in, to whom he said, "Run to the kitchen and tell the cook to make 2 hot poultices right off, for there is a gentleman upstairs very badly off indeed." In a few minutes the smoking poultices were brought in. I placed them in white handkerchiefs and hurried upstairs, went into my master's apartment, shut the door, and laid them on the mantelpiece. As he was alone for a little while, he thought he could rest a great deal better with the poultices off. However, it was necessary to have them to complete the remainder of the journey. I then ordered dinner and took my master's boots out to polish them. While doing so, I entered into conversation with one of the slaves. I may state here that on the seacoast of South Carolina and Georgia, the slaves speak worse English than in any other part of the country. This is owing to the frequent importation or smuggling in of Africans who mingle with the natives. Consequently, the language cannot properly be called English or African, but a corruption of the two. The shrewd son of African parents to whom I referred said to me, "Say, brudder, you come way from and which side you gon' day with dat our little done-up buckra?" A buckra is a white man. I replied, "To Philadelphia." "What? he exclaimed with astonishment. To Philadelphia? Yes, I said. By squash, I wish I was going with you. I hears 'em say that there's no slave way over in them parts. Is 'em so? I quietly said, I have heard the same thing. Well, continued he, as he threw down the boot and brush and placing his hands in his pockets, strutted across the floor with an air of independence, Goramighty, dim as the parts for Pompey, and I hope when you get there you will stay and never follow that buckra back to this hot quarter no more, let him be ever so good. I thanked him, and just as I took the boots up and started off, he caught my hand between his two and gave it a hearty shake, and with tears streaming down his cheeks said, God bless you, brudder, and may the Lord be with you. When you gets to freedom and sitting under your own wine and fig tree, don't forget to pray for poor Pompey. I was afraid to say much to him, but I shall never forget his earnest request, nor fail to do what little I can to release the millions of unhappy bondmen of whom he was one. At the proper time, my master had the poultices placed on, came down, and seated himself at a table in a very brilliant dining room to have his dinner. I had to have something at the same time in order to be ready for the boat, so they gave me my dinner in an old broken plate with a rusty knife and fork, and said, Here, boy, you go in the kitchen. I took it and went out, but did not stay more than a few minutes because I was in a great hurry to get back to see how the invalid was getting on. On arriving, I found 2 or 3 servants waiting on him, but he did not feel able to make a very hearty dinner. He soon finished, paid the bill, and gave the servants each a trifle, which caused one of them to say to me, Your master is a big bug, meaning a gentleman in distinction. He is the greatest gentleman that has been this way for this 6 months. I said, yes, he is some pumpkins, meaning the same as big bug. I think I'm going to start using that now. Somebody who is highly of distinction, I'm going to call them a big bug and some pumpkins. My kids will love it. Anyway, sorry, I've digressed. When we left Macon, it was our intention to take a steamer at Charleston through to Philadelphia, but on arriving there, we found that the vessels did not run during the winter, and I have no doubt it was well for us they did not, for on the very last voyage the steamer made that we intended to go by, a fugitive was discovered secreted on board and sent back to slavery. However, as we had also heard of the overland mail route, we were all right. So I ordered a fly to the door, had the luggage placed on. We got in and drove down to the custom house office, which was near the wharf where we had to obtain tickets to take a steamer for Wilmington, North Carolina. When we reached the building, I helped my master into the office, which was crowded with passengers. He asked for a ticket for himself and one for his slave to Philadelphia. This caused the principal officer, the very mean-looking cheese-colored fellow who was sitting there, cheese-colored, to look up at us very suspiciously, and in a fierce tone of voice he said to me, Boy, do you belong to that gentleman? I quickly replied, Yes, sir, which was quite correct. The tickets were handed out, and as my master was paying for them, the chief man said to him, I wish you to register your name here, sir, and also the name of your nigger, and pay $1 duty on him. My master paid the $1, and pointing to the hand that was in the poultice, requested the officer to register his name for him. This seemed to offend the high-bred South Carolinian. He jumped up, shaking his head, and cramming his hands almost through the bottom of his trousers pockets with a slave-bullying air, said, I shan't do it. I shan't do it. I'm going to say that too. This attracted the attention of all the passengers. Just then, the young military officer with whom my master traveled and conversed on the steamer from Savannah stepped in, somewhat the worse for brandy. He shook hands with my master and pretended to know all about him. He said, I know his friends, like a book. And as the officer was known in Charleston and was going to stop there with friends, the recognition was very much in my master's favor. The captain of the steamer, a good-looking, jovial fellow, seeing that the gentleman appeared to know my master, and perhaps not wishing to lose us as passengers, said in an offhand sailor-like manner, I will register the gentleman's name and take the responsibility upon myself. He asked my master's name. He said William Johnson. The names were put down, I think Mr. Johnson and slave. The captain said, "It's all right now, Mr. Johnson." He thanked him kindly, and the young officer begged my master to go with him and have something to drink and a cigar. But as he had not acquired these accomplishments, he excused himself, and we went on board and came off to Wilmington, North Carolina. When the gentleman finds out his mistake, he will, I have no doubt, be careful in future not to pretend to have an intimate acquaintance with an entire stranger. During the voyage, the captain said, "It was rather sharp shooting this morning, Mr. Johnson. It was not out of any disrespect to you, sir, but they make it a rule to be very strict at Charleston. I have known families to be detained there with their slaves till reliable information could be received respecting them. If they were not very careful, any darned abolitionist might take off a lot of valuable niggers." My master said, "I suppose so," and thanked him again for helping him over the difficulty. We reached Wilmington the next morning and took the train for Richmond, Virginia. I have stated that the American railway carriages, or cars as they are called, are constructed differently to those in England. At one end of some of them, in the South, there is a little compartment with a couch on both sides for the convenience of families and invalids, and as they thought my master was very poorly, he was allowed to enter one of these apartments at Petersburg, Virginia, where an old gentleman and two handsome young ladies, his daughters, also got in, and took seats in the same carriage. But before the train started, the gentleman stepped into my car and questioned me respecting my master. He wished to know what was the matter with him, where he was from, and where he was going. I told him where he came from and said that he was suffering from a complication of complaints and was going to Philadelphia, where he thought he could get more suitable advice than in Georgia. The gentleman said my master could obtain the very best advice in Philadelphia, which turned out to be quite correct, though he did not receive it from physicians, but from kind abolitionists who understood his case much better. The gentleman also said, "I reckon your master's father hasn't any more such faithful and smart boys as you." "Oh, yes, sir, he has," I replied, "lots on 'em," which was literally true. This seemed all he wished to know. He thanked me, gave me a 10-cent piece, and requested me to be attentive to my good master. I promised that I would do so, and have ever since endeavored to keep my pledge. During the gentleman's absence, the ladies and my master had a little cozy chat, but on his return he said, "You seem to be very much affected, sir." "Yes, sir," replied the gentleman in the poultices. "What seems to be the matter with you, sir? May I be allowed to ask?" "Inflammatory rheumatism, sir." "Oh, that is very bad, sir," said the kind gentleman. "I can sympathize with you, for I know from bitter experience what the rheumatism is. If he did, he knew a good deal more than Mr. Johnson." As we've said before, there are really no good chapter spots to stop. We'll go ahead and stop here. I'm marking my place. I'm highlighting it and putting a little bookmark in. Or I'm just highlighting it. It's not letting me put the bookmark. I'll get to that in a minute. Oh, wait. Okay, I bookmarked it. All right, so we are reading Running 1,000 Miles for Freedom by William and Ellen Craft. I'm Rashonda Cade. This is Reading with Rashonda.